So, as the slide says, this is What's My Next Financial Step, a financial framework for PhDs. I am Emily Roberts. I am the founder of Personal Finance for PhDs. You have probably you're probably on my mailing list already, or if you haven't yet, you will be soon receiving a fairly long email from me about who I am and what I do. So hopefully that's all clear, and I won't review any of that right now for you. I'll just say that I developed this framework about 6 months ago, and I've been using it with my clients and with my seminar audiences so far, and it's received a lot of great feedback. So I'm happy to be sharing this with you all for the first time. And thank you so much for joining me this morning. So this is going to be a pretty quick session. I'm aiming for about half an hour. I'm going to go through the framework that I developed, just the framework. This is basically just, okay, where am I in my finances? Where do I need to go next? Then I'll tell you a bit about the Wealthy PhD, which is my program for financial improvement for PhDs and PhD trainees. I did a pilot of the program last fall, and I'm starting another round of it in mid-February. So I'll spend a few minutes telling you about that, and then I'm happy to take your questions at the end of that time. And I do have the chat up. So if you have like a really quick question, like a clarifying question regarding the framework or even regarding the Wealthy PhD, I can, try to monitor the chat and answer that as we go along, but definitely save any questions that are like, in my situation, XYZ, and what do I do next? Save those kinds of questions for the end. So clarifying questions are welcome throughout. I will try to monitor the chat, and then I'll definitely take more questions at the end. So okay, let's jump in to why I created a framework in the first place. So I've been running my business for about 5 years, and I've been involved in the personal finance space for longer than that. And it took me until 6 months ago to develop this framework, right? So I kind of put it off because my general approach to personal finance is, well, personal finance is personal. You do you. What's best for you may not be what's best for your colleague over here. I still have that attitude, but enough people were asking me for my advice about financial goals to set, and also kind of asking me like, well, what's your take on like Dave Ramsey's baby steps? Like, do you have something similar to Dave Ramsey's baby steps that is like a general framework for everyone? And so I got enough questions, so I finally developed one, and I'm really pleased with it. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you this morning. And I basically created the framework because I was thinking back to myself as a graduate student, as a postbac, and when I was starting to manage my own finances, but not yet really, of course, not yet an expert in this area. And I was looking back at myself and realizing that I was working on way too many things at one time within my finances. Like I sort of had a general idea of where I should be going and a few different good things to do, but I was trying to do them all at once. And I didn't really know how to prioritize what was the most important thing to do, what was the second most important thing. And so that's why I created the framework, for thinking back to someone like me at that time, and what kind of help I needed. So that's where we're coming from here. Who is this framework for? I have a lot of people in my audience who are graduate students, which I love. There are a lot of people who I speak to are graduate students and postdocs, like at universities. But I was really interested in creating something that was going to be flexible for any point in someone's PhD journey, whether that is as a PhD trainee, as a graduate student or postdoc, or whether that's once you have that higher income. And there are different kinds of financial challenges that occur at a higher income and later in life. So I wanted the framework to be flexible for anyone at any career stage. So it's definitely made with PhDs in mind, or the particular challenges of our community in mind, but it's really for any career stage. Not even in graduate school yet is also fine. Just give me one moment here to manage something on the technical side. Okay. So before we even approach the framework, we have to figure out what's your starting point and what resources you have when going into the framework. That's kind of step zero on it, basically. So the first thing you need to evaluate is your cash flow situation. That is, how much money do you have coming in? How much money are you spending? In what different areas? Do you have a net positive cash flow on a consistent basis? For instance, monthly? Do you have a net negative cash flow? That's the first thing to evaluate, because really, to go in and make progress in this framework, you need positive cash flow on a consistent basis. And so if you're not yet to that point, the framework is still valuable for you, but the first thing you're going to be working on is either increasing your income or decreasing your expenses to the point where you can have that positive cash flow on a regular basis. And the other thing you need to evaluate is your balance sheet, which is your balance sheet is a collection of your assets and your liabilities. That is a record of your assets and liabilities. So assets are things like money in your checking and savings account, property that you own, investments that you own. And liabilities are basically just debts that you have. So unsecured debt like credit card debt, student loan debt, secured debt like a mortgage or a car loan, things like that. So when you take together your assets and your liabilities, you subtract liabilities from assets and you get your net worth. And so going into the framework, you need to know, okay, well, what are my debts that I'm going to need to be working on? What are the assets that I have in place? And that'll help you figure out what step on the framework you're currently starting on, and then where you can move from that point. So here, we're getting into the framework. What should my financial goal be? What should my current financial goal be? What should my next financial goal be? So here's the 8-step framework that I developed. There's 3 types of steps. There is a cash savings step that is indicated by the stack of dollar bills icon. There is a debt repayment step that's indicated by the anchor icon. And there is an investing step that's indicated by the bar graph with upward trend icon. So 3 types of steps, 8 steps total. And I'll run through really briefly what all the 8 steps are, and then tell you kind of a little bit more details about each kind of step. So first step, step 1, save a starter emergency fund. Step 2, pay off high priority debt. I'll go into in a moment what the different prioritizations are. 3, save for short-term expenses. That's expenses that are going to come up in about the next year of your life. 4, invest for retirement. That is, start to invest for retirement. I should note that the steps on here, aside from this step, are pretty much steps that you can like check off. Like once you have your start emergency fund, you can check that off your list and move on to the next step. Once you've repaid your high priority debt, you check that off, move on to the next step. This invest for retirement step is one that's going to be ongoing. So as you continue with steps 5 through 8, you're still going to be investing for retirement, basically until the point that you get to retirement. So this is a continuous one. Step 5 is to pay off medium priority debt. Step 6 is to save up a full-sized emergency fund. Step 7 is to continue to invest. That is either to invest for retirement above the minimums that I suggest in step 4, or maybe to invest for other kinds of goals like your children's education, for example. And step 8 is to pay off low priority debt. So there's the 8 steps, and I'll go into now with each one of the kinds of steps, the cash saving step, the debt repayment step, and the investing step, what exactly differentiates the steps within those from one another. So with regard to cash savings, we have 3 of those. There are 2 steps where you save up for an emergency fund and 1 step where you save up for short-term expenses. So step 1 is that starter emergency fund, and I recommend $1,000 to 2 months of expenses for that starter emergency fund size. $1,000 is basically the bare minimum that I think everyone, even a underpaid graduate student, should have in the bank as an emergency fund. And this is a step where, like for example, last fall in the Wealthy PhD, a lot of the people in the Wealthy PhD are on step 1, just working on saving up that starter emergency fund. So absolutely no shame if that's where you are. We're all starting somewhere. So that start emergency fund, minimum size $1,000, and then up to about 2 months of expenses. And in general, with emergency funds, when you kind of judge like how big should my emergency fund be, basically the smaller your financial footprint is in your life, the smaller the size of an emergency fund you need, right? So if you're a homeowner, you need a larger emergency fund than a renter. If you own a car, you need a larger emergency fund than a non-car owner. If you have dependents, you need a larger emergency fund than someone who doesn't. So use those kinds of guidelines when you're judging, well, should I fall more towards the $1,000 side of this range or more towards the 2 months of expenses side of this range? Okay, so that is step 1, save a starter emergency fund. Step 6 is when you save the full-sized emergency fund that you often hear about kind of in personal finance circles. So that's 3 to 6 months of expenses. The starter emergency fund, the $1,000 or so in the bank, is what's going to help you through minor emergencies that occur relatively frequently in your life. Like maybe your car breaks down, or maybe you have to take a last minute flight somewhere, you have like a minor medical event. That's what the starter emergency fund can handle. The full sized emergency fund is what's needed for the more rare and larger emergencies in your life, like job loss, maybe a natural disaster or a major medical event. This is the emergency fund that will save your bacon when that happens. But because those kinds of emergencies are more rare, that's why I put off saving up that full-sized emergency fund until step 6, which is actually relatively late in this whole framework. But the reason I can do that, that we can put it off, is because we have step 3, another cash saving step, which is to plan and potentially save up for the irregular expenses in your life that you can see coming down the pike in about the upcoming year. So to give you an idea what those irregular expenses are, here's a list of pretty common irregular expenses in a PhD or PhD trainee's life. If you own a car, pretty much anything having to do with your car is going to be an irregular expense. Any shopping that you do on a less frequent than monthly basis is an irregular expense. Insurance premiums, if you pay those, like for instance, I pay my car insurance like once every 6 months, I pay my renter's insurance once a year. Those kinds of payments are irregular expenses. If you are not having income tax withheld from your stipend or salary, then your quarterly estimated tax or your annual tax payment would be considered an irregular expense. Travel, if you have to buy flights somewhere, et cetera, irregular expenses. If you are a graduate student, you have any responsibility for tuition and fees, those are irregular expenses. Um, and of course, the bane of every PhD trainee's existence, research and conference expenses that even if they're being reimbursed or if you pay out of pocket, either way, it kind of becomes an irregular expense if you have to front that expense for a few months. So for these irregular expenses that you have regularly in your life that you can see coming up in the next year, it's really important, especially when you have that low cash flow, to make a plan for either how you're going to pay for these things out of your monthly income in the month that they come up, or how you can start to save in advance for these irregular expenses. This step 3 of saving up for irregular expenses, is another one that people found really powerful inside the Wealthy PhD last fall. And we had several people working on this step, figuring out what their irregular expenses are and preparing for them, usually for the first time, because it really takes a degree of experience and being able to plan with your budget to do this particular step. Okay, moving on to the debt repayment steps. So as I said, there are 3 debt repayment steps, steps 2, 5, and 8. And in these steps, you will be completely paying off your high, medium, and low priority debt. So how do we decide what's high, what's medium, and what's low priority? The most important, the primary way that you would differentiate among these is by the interest rate of the debt. So for high priority debt, that's debt that's above about a 6 to 8% interest rate. And of course, I'm speaking for the moment in the US. We are in a very low interest rate environment. This is what's considered high priority at high interest rate at this time, above about 6 to 8%. In other times in our history, this has not been the case, but it is right now. So I put a range there, 6 to 8%, because this will, your personal sort of disposition towards debt will affect whether you think 8% and above is high priority or whether you think 6% and above is high priority. But in that range is where I see the tipping point between medium and high priority debt. So primary way to figure this out is by interest rate. So high priority would be above about 6 to 8%. Medium priority is about 3% to somewhere in that 6 to 8% range. And then low priority is anything below 3%. But there are a few exceptions that I make to the strict interest rate categorization here. The first one has to do with student loans generally. So if your student loans are currently deferred and subsidized, so for example, if you have student loans from undergrad that are subsidized and you're currently in graduate school and they're deferred, those become low priority. You can put those off until step 8 or until they become not deferred anymore and not subsidized anymore. So those are low priority for the time being at any rate. If your loans are deferred and unsubsidized, I basically don't think of deferred student loans as high priority. If you have other high priority debt like credit card debt, you need to address that first. But they certainly could be medium priority or low priority, depending on that interest rate, which will be accruing during that deferment period. And then if you are pursuing a forgiveness program, such as public service loan forgiveness or another similar one with an income-driven repayment option, if you're committed to that program and it's a good idea for you, you shouldn't ever make more than the minimum payments on those debts. So that is a low priority debt to be paying off ahead of time. That is kind of a zero priority debt to be paying off ahead of time. Now, I'm actually pretty skeptical about forgiveness programs and income-driven repayment programs, so I don't think they're right for everyone who qualifies for them. But if it is right for you and if it's something that you are committed to, you do not need to be making advance payments on that, so it becomes low priority. And other exceptions to this general interest rate rule about debt prioritization. Credit card debt and IRS debt, in my book, is always high priority. Doesn't matter what the interest rate is. Revolving debt like credit cards is the one that you want to get out of your life as quickly as possible. And also, you don't want the IRS on your back. They are very, very powerful for doing things like garnishing your wages. So if you have either of those types of debts, those fall in the high priority step, in my opinion. If you have debt that's at a variable interest rate, I would basically bump it up one priority level from wherever the current interest rate would allow it to fall. It's been going on for a while, but we at some point are anticipating interest rates increasing significantly. And so it's not variable interest rate debt is kind of a dangerous kind of debt to have around. So I would bump that up one priority level from wherever the current interest rate would put it. And then if you have a mortgage and you're not paying PMI, if you have a mortgage that's below about 5%, I put that in the low priority category. I'm in the camp that's like, don't pay off your mortgage early if it's at a good low interest rate and if you're done paying PMI. So that's low priority in my opinion. And if you have a mortgage and it's at above a 5% interest rate, then yes, go ahead and pay it off ahead of time to some degree until you can refinance and get it down under 5%, or you can work on your credit, whatever needs to happen to get that lower mortgage interest rate. So, low priority, in my opinion. All right, on to the investing steps. Two of those, as I said. Step 4 is when you start to invest for retirement. That could be inside an individual retirement arrangement or IRA if you are not given retirement benefits through your university, for example. Um, as of 2020, people receiving fellowship income, non W-2 fellowship income, now can use IRAs to invest for retirement. So that's a great action to take if you are newly eligible. So, in my opinion, the minimum amount you should be investing before you consider this step complete is at least 10% of your gross income if you're in your 20s, 15% or more of your gross income if you're starting in your 30s. And if you're starting in your 40s or later, at least 20% of your gross income into a retirement account before you can consider this step accomplished and, of course, maintain that savings rate, but move on to step 5 after that point. So if you do have workplace-based benefits, a 401k or a 403b through your job, that's an excellent place to put this money in addition to or instead of an IRA, if you like. If you have the potential to receive a match in your retirement account, your 401k or 403b, for example, um, that becomes a higher priority actually to save just the amount of money to get that match. I would put that actually like at step 1B or like 2A. So like even before you pay off your high priority debt, at least consider putting enough money into your retirement account to get that match. But if a match is not available, then you can wait until step 4 before starting to save for retirement. And then step 7 is to continue to invest. That could be to invest more in the retirement accounts above that minimum amount I just mentioned, or it could be to save for other kinds of goals like your children's education or I don't know, like you buying a second home, things like that can fall into step 7. Okay, so that is the framework. 3 kinds of steps over 8 steps total. And I hope that you can kind of see where you are right now. Like, are you when you need to be working on step 1? Like, you don't have that $1,000 in the bank account yet. If that's the case, you definitely need to be there. Maybe you can see yourself on a later step. Maybe you're even like straddling multiple steps. That's what I was doing. That's what I see myself as doing when I look back at my pre personal finance expert days. I was working on like three different steps at once. And the issue with that is just that when you split your focus and you split your cash flow, it's really hard to see yourself making good progress on any one thing when you're splitting all of your energy. And so it can be hard to stay motivated in a process like that. So that's the main reason for only working on one thing at a time. Also, some things could be suboptimal compared to others. So that is the framework. So, how do you actually accomplish whatever the goal is that you are now identifying for yourself? So, five sort of really high level things you could do: strategic frugality, that is decreasing your expenses in some way. I say strategic because in my opinion, there are better ways and worse ways to practice frugality. Of course, the more you listen to me, or if you want to be part of the Wealthy PhD, you will have plenty of opinions from me on how to be strategic in your frugal choices. Increasing your income, that could be, okay, well, I just need to finish graduate school and get on to a higher paying job, or finish my postdoc, get onto a higher paying job. That's a super valid way to do that. Side hustling is also a great way to do that. If you're not ready to move on to your next career stage anytime soon, negotiating, another great way to increase your income. So a few ideas there. Tracking budgeting, I feel, is a vital component to good personal finance practice. Tracking your spending and budgeting, which is telling your money what it's going to do every pay period. I'm also a huge fan of automation within your finances. So once you have like a debt repayment goal you're working on, or a savings goal, automating that to the greatest degree you can means that you'll never forget or fail to complete that step. So I really love automation. And then mindset is actually something I've been learning a lot, and also starting to teach more about in recent months. So your money mindset deeply affects how quickly and how well you'll be able to accomplish any financial goal. So it's really worth paying some attention to. Okay, so now we're going to turn to talking about the Wealthy PhD for just a few minutes, and then again, I'll take questions at the end of that period. So the Wealthy PhD is my program for financial improvement for PhDs and PhD trainees. If you want to read about it, pfforphds.com, that's my website, /Wealthy PhD is the best place to go. But I'll tell you a little bit about the program over the next few minutes, and I'm also going to be dropping in some quotes for some feedback that I got from the participants in the round that I did this last fall, to kind of show you in their words what the program is. So, who can become a Wealthy PhD? Who is this program for? As I kind of said at the beginning of the webinar about the framework, like, it's really for anyone who identifies as having a PhD, or who is pursuing a PhD. There's no real financial requirements for getting into the program aside from being able to pay the fee. Like, you don't have to have a certain amount of cash flow available every month. You don't have to have certain amounts of assets or anything like that. As I said when I started the program, it's for people with six figures of debt to six figures of assets, and everything in between. And that certainly was true in the first round. So we have people all over the financial map, but what unites us is the fact that we all are in or have come from this academic environment and this period of having a low income during graduate school and during the postdoc. So we can sort of all identify with one another's challenges, but also like the reasons why we even became PhDs in the first place. It's what binds us together as a group. So what is the Wealthy PhD? It's a program, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a moment, but the main thing to know is that it's goal-based. So that's why we start off with covering this framework. So when you go into the Wealthy PhD, you and I are together going to identify one large overarching financial goal that you'll be working on over the course of the 10-week program. And then we're going to every week break down that large goal into a smaller goal that's easy to accomplish within the course of a week. So something like, okay, I'm on step 4, I need to start investing for retirement. I need to open a Roth IRA and fund it. That's like a really big goal that can seem intimidating. So that might be your goal for the whole 10-week program, or at least for a portion of the 10-week program. And then we would break that down week by week. Okay, this week I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be researching different brokerage firms. Okay, this week I'm going to be researching different investment options. This week I'm going to be working on my budget and figuring how much I can save. So we would break that down week by week to make it a more, something that's actually able to be accomplished in the course of a week, instead of remaining this intimidating goal that you put off and put off for months and years at a time. So the program is really quite action oriented. every week you're expected to take at least one action within your finances to work towards that overall large goal. So, in the words of a few other participants from Alex, the Wealthy PhD is a program to help you improve your financial situation and increase your financial security, no matter what stage of your career or life you're in. And then from Helga, this program is a finance support group grounded in respect, compassion, positivity, and kindness. Emily has facilitated a safe and open space for the group to share their struggles, victories, and she has encouraged us to tackle bite-sized weekly financial goals. So really, really lovely characterization from Helga there, and I do agree with it. And then from Bula with Tiwi, the program is focused on getting you to take action about what areas of your financial life you're most unhappy about. So I love that he emphasized that taking action part. So the Wealthy PhD comprises three main components. There is a course component, a coaching component, and a and a community component. And all three of those together work to provide inspiration, accountability, and actionable knowledge to the participants. So I'll explain that more. In the course component, throughout the 10-week program, we're covering one different topic in each week. Each week is kind of themed around one financial topic. I provide written course material written by me and also kind of supplementary course material and references by other people on that topic in each given week. And we also do one Q&A call every single week that any participant can jump into. And that is, it's supposed to be themed around the same, topic for the week. And I'll take those questions first, but really it's kind of an open forum for asking any kind of question you prefer. But they're themed around these different weeks. So basically on Monday, you would receive the new course content for the week. And then on Friday or Saturday, we'll do a Q&A call to address any questions that have come up as you've been kind of digesting that material throughout the week. And these are the topics I have planned for the spring 2020 group for the Wealthy PhD. Money mindset, we always start with that. As I said, it's an important one to work on to kind of frame and set the tone for the whole program. Tracking and budgeting, short-term savings, that's that step 3 that I talked about earlier. Increase your income in 2 different ways, one through your primary position that you hold, and then also increase your income through side hustling, because a lot of PhDs pursue that route. Frugality, debt repayment, investing, insurance, and financial advisors. What insurance do I need? How do I know what kind of financial advisor I might want to work with? And then family finances as the last week. So this is the 10 topics I have planned for the spring. The compendium of each week's curriculum is a great primer for learning more about different financial topics from Mylan. Okay, second component is the coaching component. Officially, we will have 3 one-on-one coaching sessions, you and I, one before the program starts, before that 10 weeks officially starts. One, and that, in that initial session is when you and I will together decide on what is that big overarching financial goal that you'll be working on throughout the program. And then one meeting at the midway point to say, okay, how has this first half of the program gone? What do we need to change to make sure that you accomplish your goal, by the end of the program? And then one meeting after the end of the program to say, okay, did we accomplish the goal? What do you need to work on next if you did or did not accomplish the goal? So kind of an exit interview of sorts from the program. So those are kind of the official one-on-one coaching sessions, but really all the calls that we have throughout the Wealthy PhD are group coaching in a sense. I appreciated Emily's positive encouragement and her ability to inspire us to tackle small, bite-sized finance-related tasks each week from Helga. Okay, now the crown jewel of the program is truly the community. This is the part that I can take the least credit for because it really depends on the participants, and we had fantastic participants in the first round of the Wealthy PhD, and I'm hoping for that every time I do this. So as far as community goes, I will take the participants in the spring 2020 large group, everyone who comes in at that time, and assign everyone to a smaller group of about maybe 4 to 6 people. And that's a group that you're going to be meeting with every single week to set these small financial goals that are working up to that big financial goal that you've set, both to state what your goal is for the upcoming week and also review what happened in the last week. Did you accomplish the goal you set in the previous week? It's a great spot for, troubleshooting with me and with the other participants on the call. You'll get to know your group over the course of the 10-week program. Hopefully you'll bond together. That definitely happened in this first round. So you'll have that one call every single week as a check-in, make sure that you've been taking the action that you said you would. And we also, throughout the entire week and the entire program, it's all operated through the Mighty Networks platform. So that's a platform that just can foster discussion and interaction among all the participants. So I post a new prompt every day throughout all the weekdays in the program. And, everyone's welcome to participate in those prompts or make your own, ask your own questions, post your budget if you want to. You can use it as you will for interaction with the other members. Bulawatiwi said, I cannot speak highly enough about the weekly cohort calls. Listening to other cohort members share their success stories helped motivate me, and they also kept me accountable about my goals. From Bulawatiwi. I had an entire community to help me find answers to my financial questions and solutions to my financial challenges. From Alex. And so, as far as transformation goes, um, several of the members, I mean, all the members experienced some degree of financial transformation last fall. Virtually all of them came out with a vastly improved actual balance sheet, as I talked about earlier. Like, they really were able to reduce their spending in certain areas, increase their income in many cases. There was great sort of real life in the numbers financial transformation. But when I asked for, what was the transformation that occurred during the program of the participants, most of them actually spoke about mindset instead of about, the numbers that changed. So I'll have a few of those quotes for you now. Unpacking my own narrative and limiting beliefs around my money mindset, and then replacing these unhelpful stories with positive, healthy affirmations helped me to realize I can take control of my financial future. My entire mindset related to money has shifted because of the Wealthy PhD. Emily and the support group have helped me take the fear and shame out of my relationship with money and to see my finances as an empowering, lifelong project that can be managed and tackled. So I'm really pleased with those mindset transformations, absolutely, because changing, I mean, that's the root of everything, right? If you can alter your mindset, then you will naturally be changing the tactics that you use. And of course, you'll be getting different results if you manage to change that mindset. So I was really pleased to have these, my participants express that they had experienced a great change in that area. Okay, so logistics of the program as we wrap up here. It's a 10-week program. As I said, it commences on February 10th. And we'll actually kind of get started before that point, because as I said, you and I will have a one-on-one meeting prior to the 10th. There is a fee for participating in the program. It's $495 if you want to pay it upfront, or 3 payments of $174 are also, that's totally fine if you want to do it that way. And the first payment will be billed, or the full amount will be billed in early February, just for your planning purposes. There is an application to be able to participate in the Wealthy PhD. There's no essay questions. It's mostly just yes or no's. But if you know already that you want to participate and you want to do that directly, pfrphds.com/apply is the place to go to. You and I will have a short conversation. I'm calling it an interview, but it's really a more casual conversation for about 15 minutes prior to me accepting you into the program. And that is basically, it's basically just to make sure that it's going to work for you. That you are ready, that you're able to commit and everything to doing the program. I basically don't want to charge you a bunch of money if I don't think the program is going to work well for you at this time. It's not right for everyone at every time. So we'll have that chat. If you're on the fence about applying, if you're not sure if you want to do it, go ahead and apply. Let's have that chat, and you and I together can determine, is this a good idea for you at this time? The application deadline is the 31st of January. And after that point, I'll also be sending out a doodle poll for scheduling those weekly calls that I mentioned. I want to end on this really sweet note from Bulawatiwi. In his feedback, he told me, "You have changed my life for the better more than you can ever imagine, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Emily." So I just really appreciated seeing that, and wanted to share it with you, just to share that, this program is about a lot more than finances. It's about personal transformation that kind of touches every area of your life. So I am happy to take questions now at this point, whether that's on the framework, whether that's on the Wealthy PhD. You can just pop them in the chat, and I will read them and answer them to the best of my ability. So go ahead and do that now. So I have one that's come in. It says, I'm specifically looking to learn more about passive investing options, particularly asset allocation, to help me make suitable choices. Can you please provide suggestions? Yes, so that is a great question. Not necessarily within the scope of what we're talking about today. Um, But I think a great place to go to learn more about asset allocation is actually the Bogle heads. So that's Bogle, Bogle, named after Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. Bogleheads, I think it's .com. So, but if you search their forum, the Bogleheads, there's a 10-part video series on investing. That's sort of a beginner's guide to investing. And so that one of those videos, at least one, will cover asset allocation. Um, Another great place is just if you're getting to this question of asset allocation, which is an excellent one, I think it may be time for you to read a book on investing. And so one that's really popular right now, I have not read it yet, but it's really popular right now, is The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. That's one suggestion for you. Another one that I have personally read and used, especially early on in my financial life, was The Only Investing Guide You'll Ever Need. So a couple titles for you to look up. But kind of the general principle here is that when you're young, I assume most people in my audience are in their 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s, your asset allocation can be much more aggressive if you're doing long-term investing. And so definitely something that's very, very heavy towards stocks is probably going to be most appropriate right now. So thank you so much for that question. Another one, are the small groups composed of people in a similar financial place? So I would love to run the Wealthy PhD having the smaller groups composed of people in a similar financial place. So people who are all working on a debt repayment step, for example, or people who are all working on saving up that first $1,000. That would be ideal. And if I can do it, I will do it. But really, mostly it's probably just going to be based on who's available at the same time, honestly, because what's most important is that you show up consistently to that call. So if for some reason I have, 20 people who are all available at the same time and I want to have those calls, well, it wouldn't work for me at the same time because I'm going to attend all the calls. But anyway, if I can do it, I will do it, but I'm not going to guarantee that. I guess I'll put it that way. Okay. I'm just reading the next question, so give me a moment here. So the question that I got from Ellie, I want to follow up with you about that privately. So please email me that question. I'll either respond over email or we can set up a quick call about that because it's a pretty in-depth question. Okay. Samantha asks, where is a good place to start if you're thinking about starting a Roth IRA? So a couple different camps here. And this is something I discuss in depth in the investing course material in the Wealthy PhD. So you have to start by picking a brokerage firm. And so there's different categories here. I am very partial to what's called discount brokerage firms. That's like Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, those kinds of places. You can open up an account online, super easy. They have very low fees. You can even get down to zero fees in Fidelity, for example. So I'm very partial to discount brokerage firms, but the issue with them is that they often have minimums, either a minimum to open a kind of account, it could be $1,000, maybe $3,000, could be minimum to open an account, or a minimum, sometimes they waive the minimum to open the account, but you have to invest a minimum amount every month, maybe like $50 or $100. If you don't reach those minimums, then I would say it's totally fine to look somewhere else. Another really popular type of brokerage firm to go through is a robo-advisor. I'm sure you've heard of some like Wealthfront, Betterment. They are very heavily advertising these days. So that's a great place to go if you have you want a little bit more of a hands-on experience. So at the discount brokerage firm kind of place like Vanguard, you will do all the selection of your own funds yourself. They provide a little bit of guidance. You can even go into like a target date retirement account if you want to, if you're saving for retirement. So they do provide some guidance, but going to a robo-advisor, you'll give them more information about yourself and your goals and your attitudes towards investing. And then they'll provide a recommendation for you, and they'll also manage the funds for you. So that could be a good place if you want a little bit more of a hands-on little bit more help from the brokerage firm itself, but of course you're not going to be paying like a human to do it. So they do charge a higher fee with robo-advisors. So it's not something I'm like, oh yeah, everyone should use a robo-advisor, because fees do matter, and paying a higher fee is disadvantageous. But if you decide that it's worth it to you to pay the fee, then that's perfectly fine. So a robo-advisor could be another good place. There's another kind of sort of brokerage firm. It overlaps with the other two really, called a micro investing platform. So this is like um, Acorns or M1, other kinds of platforms like this. Sometimes people throw Robinhood in there, although I don't really think it's appropriate. But micro investing platforms are the places where, like, they really advertise you can invest like $5 per month or like $1 per month or whatever. The issue with the micro investing platforms, while they are attractive for people who have a small savings rate, the issue is that they charge relatively high fees. If they charge a fee at all, it's going to be relatively high if you really are only investing like $5 per month and you pay like a $1 per month fee. That's really high. So you really need to think about what's your savings rate? Do you have a lump sum of money you're able to put in at the beginning? How much input do you want from the platform you're using? And that will be guiding you. That may be a longer answer to the question than you wanted. I kind of always default to that Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab recommendation if you're willing to go with one of those discount brokerage firms. I think that's a great place to start. Okay, another question. For Roth IRAs, will the total money you place in the tax cycle be divided per month automatically? No, it will not automatically be done that way, although you can elect to save that way. So um, this question is like, so when you contribute to a Roth IRA, you can actually, like, okay, we're in January 2020, you can actually put $6,000 into a Roth IRA right now, and that's your contribution for the whole year. You could put 3,000 in right now, and that's your contribution for the whole year. It can be whatever you want. You can also divide it out and, tell, like, for instance, if you're going with Vanguard, you can tell Vanguard, hey, Vanguard, take $500 out of my account every single month for this 12-month period. That's my $6,000 for the course of the year. You can set it up to do that way, but it doesn't have to be that way automatically. Um, are there reasons to choose Vanguard versus Fidelity? I really like Vanguard, but they're less friendly to international students. I'm having trouble starting an IRA with them. Yes, really good point. So I did, if you haven't listened to it yet, I did an interview with um, Hui-Chin Shen a few weeks back in season 4 of my podcast. And so it's talking about, investing for international students and scholars and workers. And we do briefly touch on how to choose a brokerage firm. And so even though you are permitted to invest while you're in the US as an international student, scholar, worker, most likely, it may not be that everyone's willing to work with you. So I would say if someone's not willing to work with you, then cross them off the list and move on. As long as you personally have actually called them. Like if you've called Vanguard and given them your information and they say, nope, we can't open an account for you, great, cross them off the list. But I would not do that based on something you heard from like your colleague or someone in your peer group, because the answer may be different depending on which country you're coming from. It may be different, of course, based on your residency status. So if you're considering Vanguard or Fidelity or whoever, call them up yourself and ask them. If you get a no, that's fine. You can move on to something else, but don't let like rumors basically determine who you should invest with. That's actually something that Tiwi, who was in the Wealthy PhD last fall, said to me, because he's an international student and he had heard from XYZ people that he wouldn't be able to invest for whatever reasons. And he had believed that for a long time, even though he was ready to invest. And during the program, he just like called up, I think it was Vanguard, just called up a brokerage firm and was like, can I open an account? And they were like, totally. So that rumor for him that he had heard was actually incorrect. So if you've done the research yourself and they said no, move on. That's totally fine. My opinions in general on Vanguard versus Fidelity. Fidelity does have these wonderful zero cost index funds that are now available, which is really awesome. As I said, fees are important, so minimizing them is a great action to take. Fidelity does have those zero fee funds, a few of them, but Vanguard overall has a better reputation for having low fees in general. So that's kind of why a lot of people in the personal finance space love to recommend Vanguard. And I mean, they're both good, but Vanguard has the better, I would say, reputation overall and track record of providing low fees. And Vanguard is also, I guess you could say, it's like customer owned. So there's not the same kind of profit motive that other brokerage firms have in place for Vanguard. The other thing about Fidelity that I have heard, and also by looking at their funds, some of their funds that you would expect to be passively managed, which is the kind of investing that I promote is passive investing. Some funds that you might expect to be passively managed are actually actively managed. So I don't really like that. And if you're going to use Fidelity, you should be really careful about making sure you're, in my opinion, only choosing passive investments instead of like some active investments, which might be like sneakily in place. Okay, so I have come to the end of the questions currently in my queue. So if you have your question, definitely put it in right now, and I'll try to address it before we sign off. But we seem like we're wrapping up here. So I'll just throw out there that if you're interested in the Wealthy PhD, please get in touch with me, whether that's by submitting an application or just shoot me an email, emily@pfforphds.com. Any follow-up questions you have as well. I also offer one-on-one coaching if the program isn't right for you, but you want to work with me personally for one or more sessions, we could do that. So just kind of follow up and get in touch with me. And I hope to see you inside the program in this upcoming spring. I think it's going to be a fantastic next go round. We have about half the people from the fall cohort are staying on. So they'll be on the platform interacting with you guys in the future, providing their experience and now expertise in this area and how they've been changed by the program and what they've done in their finances. So they'll be there to interact with you as well as me. So I'm not seeing any more questions that have come in so far. I'll wait just another moment, but we will be signing off shortly. So any other questions or comments you want to make, now is the time. You are welcome. Okay, does having a Roth IRA have any impact on your taxes? So if you're asking about the current tax year, in the year when you contribute to a Roth IRA, no. So with a traditional IRA or traditional 403b, any kind of traditional tax advantage retirement account, you get to take a tax deduction on the amount you contribute in the current tax year. Um, and then the money grows tax free, and then you pay your tax when you withdraw the money. With a Roth, as you probably know, it's the opposite. You contribute after tax money, so you don't get a tax deduction in the current year, but the effect that it has on your taxes is in the future. So your money gets to grow tax free while it's in the Roth IRA, and then you get to withdraw it tax free in retirement. So you don't get a tax deduction right now. I think that's the answer to your question, but it has a vast impact on your taxes overall in the future. Okay, I'm just going to wait one more minute here for any remaining questions. Thank you all so much for joining me. You are welcome. Yes, you are welcome. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you got a lot out of this. If you want to recommend this to any of your like friends or something, I'm going to be sharing the recording with you later today or tomorrow. And I'll put in the email when I send that to you a way that your whoever you want to recommend it to can also sign up. Please ask them to sign up so they get on my mailing list, but ask them to sign up and they can receive a recording of the webinar as well. You are welcome. You are welcome. Thank you for coming. Okay, haven't seen any new questions, so I'm going to officially sign off now, but thanks again, you all. Hope to be in touch with you soon. Bye.